Good evening. I'm Dr. Michael Rothman, and thanks for coming to the Edison Library tonight for my talk. Tonight's talk is 3 common nutritional deficiencies and how they can destroy your health. And you know, when I wrote the title for this, I said, wow, that sounds pretty strong. I hope I don't scare anybody, but these are so common and they're so destructive that I think that it really does stand. Let me just introduce myself. I'm Michael Rothman. I'm board certified in internal medicine. I'm also board certified in emergency medicine. I still do emergency medicine at Ocean Medical Center in Brook, New Jersey. I'm also medical director of MD Wellness and Spa. That's in East Brunswick, New Jersey. For each of the 3 nutrients that we're going to talk about tonight, and I'm not going to keep you in the dark, we're going to talk about iodine, magnesium, and vitamin D. Now, why have I chosen these? Because just about every single person walking around is deficient in 1 or all 3 of these items. And I'm going to explain why this is, how we can detect it, what the signs and symptoms may be, and how you should supplement with this. So I want to start off with a concept before we talk about the specifics. The concept is for any nutrient out there, whether the nutrient is vitamin C or vitamin D or water or just name anything that's nutritious, there's an optimal value. And there's a range. It doesn't have to be exactly on point, but there's a range where you need to have optimal amounts in your system and or taking in. If you get too much of anything, it's no good for you. And if you get too little of anything, it's no good. So then the key is to find the right balance between too much and too little. And this is what I call the Goldilocks principle. And anybody who has had the pleasure of, anyone who's heard me speak before, I always talk about the Goldilocks principle because it's really, really important in your health. If you want to be healthy, you need to have some sort of a balance. And that's what the Goldilocks principle is, that you don't want your soup to be too hot or too cold or the bed to be too hard or too soft. Everybody's heard of Goldilocks, of course. And so this U-shaped curve, you want to be somewhere in here between these two. This is like 1 standard deviation above and 1 below. But you want to be in this area for all nutrients. If you're down here, you're in trouble. If you're way up here, you're in trouble. Okay? That's pretty straightforward. Most people, or a lot of people, are way down here when it comes to these 3 nutrients: magnesium, iodine, and vitamin D. For poisons, on the other hand, toxic materials, there's no optimal amount of a toxic material. Oftentimes in my practice, I'll hear, doctor, what's better, saccharin or equal? I say neither one's better. One may be less bad than the other, but neither one's better, okay? They're poisons. Food colorings are poisons. Artificial sweeteners are poisons. Vegetable oils in general are poisons. Sugar is a poison. The less you put in your body, the better. Let's talk about iodine now. One of our big 3 here that's so lacking. Now, why is it so lacking? Well, there's a few reasons, and I've highlighted a couple. Number 1, I'm going to talk about halogens in the environment, and in a moment I'm going to tell you what a halogen is. When it comes to overall mineral deficiencies, though, depletion of the soil. If you open up, this has been warned about for well over 50 years. You can open up actually nutritional books from 50 years ago, and they were warning about depletion of the soil. I've seen one reference going 100 years ago talking about depletion of the soil. And what happens in commercial farming is that you keep throwing seeds in there and keep throwing fertilizer in there, commercial fertilizer, and you keep, basically, the minerals are coming out of the soil within the plants, but you're not replacing what's coming out. And so, consequently, there's mineral depletion when it comes to all trace minerals, whether it's selenium or magnesium or manganese or iodine. This is a very, very serious problem. That's why organic farming, putting back into the soil what you're taking out, is the only real sustainable way of farming. And again, these books have been talking about this for 100 years already. So we have these poisons in our environment, which I'll get to in a moment. Depletion of soil, which also contributes to the magnesium deficiency. Warnings of overdosage. I can't tell you how many things I've seen in the medical literature. Be so careful with iodine. Iodine's so dangerous. Stay away from it. Blah, blah, blah. let me tell you, the deficiency situation is way more common than the overdosage. Now, who remembers this from chemistry class in high school? Raise your hand. Really? That's great. Okay, let's look. This is the periodic table of elements. And see right there, that's iodine. It's considered a halogen. And look what's in the same column as iodine, F, which stands for fluoride or fluorine, right? Fluorine. Cl is chlorine. Br is bromine. And then we have iodine, which we pronounce iodine. They're all related. They all have overlapping functions when it comes to biochemical reactions. Now, what's important about this is because, well, we have fluoridated water, which means we're being poisoned. Essentially, we have all this fluoride in the water that they're putting in there. So that is forcing out the iodine out of your body. We have chlorine in our drinking water. When we shower, it's in so many things. That's pushing the iodine out of your system. And bromine. A lot of the white breads, for example, will use bromidated flour. It's been bleached with bromine. They used to use iodine in there, but now they put bromine in there. So, and if you go in a hot tub, bromine's in there. Okay, if you go in a swimming pool, whatever, the chlorine or bromine is in there. So we have so much fluorine, chlorine, and bromine in our environment, it's really, really bad. And every single one of these, because they're in the same group as iodine, will essentially push the iodine out of your system because they're competing for the same biochemical part in your body. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so we have a soil depletion, then you have all these halogens in your environment. Then the misconceptions. Recommended daily allowance of iodine. It's 150 micrograms a day. Oh, if I just use enough salt, I'll be fine because I'm using iodized salt, doc. There's no way I can be iodine deficient. Well, if you believe in the myth that 150 micrograms a day is enough iodine, you can probably get it from your salt. And another myth is that iodine is only needed for your thyroid gland. This is not true. 150 micrograms a day may be enough for your thyroid, but what about the rest of your body? And this is where medical science has taken a big misstep here. Iodine's a very important mineral. It's not just important for your thyroid gland. It has many functions. If you ever got a cut, what do you use? Iodine. Why? Iodine kills bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites, everything. So if you don't have enough iodine in your system, guess what? Your immune system doesn't work as well, okay? Because it kills stuff in your body as well. So it enhances your immune function. It also becomes part of your thyroid, as I just mentioned. We've maybe heard of thyroxine, right? Or synthroid, levothyroxine. There's probably people in this room on one of these drugs. The chemical name for thyroxine is tetraiodothyronine. See the iodine right in there, the iodo? That is iodine. It's a major part of your thyroid hormone. If you don't have enough iodine in your system, you will suffer from thyroid disease. You could be hypo, you could be hyper, you could have autoimmune thyroid disease. It's very important for the thyroid gland, as has been established. Triiodothyronine is another hormone which is very important in thyroid metabolism. So goiter is a big neck. You see how big this kid's neck is? It shouldn't be that big. So if you don't have enough iodine in your system, the thyroid gland will grow bigger and bigger and bigger, trying to suck up all the iodine in your body. That's what a goiter is. Yes, ma'am?
Does it also come out the front?
The thyroid is like right there. It could come out the front. You certainly don't have goiter.
No, but I see some people who have like a prominence right here.
That, it's possible. I couldn't tell you without examining that patient. Okay. But nonetheless, this concept of the organ and the gland growing to meet its iodine needs goes beyond just the thyroid. There's other organs in your body that will do the same thing. So I mentioned the immune system problems. Fibrocystic breast disease. Iodine is really important for breast health. If you don't have enough iodine in your system, your breasts will try to grab the iodine in this, metaphorically speaking, and you'll develop cysts in your breasts. And also, low iodine is associated with higher risk of breast cancer. Polycystic ovary syndrome. Anybody hear of this? So if your ovaries don't get enough iodine, guess what happens? They start growing cysts also. This is very, very not well known to most medical doctors. You can go to a gynecologist and walk in there and they have, oh, you have PCOS. I'm going to give you this drug to do that. Or you have fibrocystic breasts, so we can cut them out for you. These are specialists, and they don't even know that iodine is important here. Don't ask me why, but our medical education when it comes to nutrition is really horrible. And everything that I'm talking about tonight, just about everything I'm talking about tonight, I learned after med school, after my training in internal medicine. So not only could low iodine cause this, but there's other things like high blood pressure, diabetes, heart arrhythmias. Anyone ever heard of the drug amiodarone? Okay, it's a pretty common drug. Look at the name, amiodarone. See the iodine in there? The major component of amiodarone is iodine. And the dosages that they're using are unbelievably high. So then they say, oh, be careful, don't use what Dr. Rothman tells you to use for your dosage. Realize how much they're giving you with the amiodarone. The dosages of amiodarone are like 25, 50 milligrams a day, which would deliver a lot of iodine. The toxicity of this drug, though, is really not from the iodine. It's from the other components of the drug. But when iodine is low, it can actually lead to other problems, systemic problems, because now you have immune system problems, you have thyroid problems, you have heart regulatory problems, you have estrogen and hormonal problems, and all these come together and can lead to other problems as well. So as you pick away and peel off the layers of the onion, you may find, wow, iodine is at the root of a lot of my problems. So how do you detect an iodine deficiency? Because this is so common. It's a little tricky. You can't do a blood test to check for iodine. There's a lot of lay stuff. If you go on the internet and look, they'll tell you, just put some iodine on your skin, and if the color goes away. Have you heard this? Anybody heard this? You have? Okay. This is a bunch of hooey, okay? You tried it? Yeah. And were you iodine deficient? No. Okay. The gold standard test that I'm aware of is an iodine load test. The patient has to consume a bunch of iodine, usually about 50 milligrams of iodine in one day, which is not a huge dose, by the way. It's less than you would get in your amiodarone. And then you have them, you collect their urine for 24 hours and see how much of the iodine they've actually kept in their body and how much came out in their urine. Theoretically, you should excrete like 90% of the iodine that you take in. If you're excreting only 75% or 60% or 50% or 40%, the less you excrete, the more it means that your body's keeping. It won't keep more than it needs. There's also certain standard blood test patterns that may raise a suspicion of iodine deficiency. For example, T4, T3. If you have a low level of T4 at the same time you have a high level of T3, that's suspicious for iodine deficiency. Why? Because, well, there's only 3 iodines in this one. There's 4 in that one, so the body's trying to sort of save its iodine. So you'll see funny patterns in the thyroid test. You may see other funny patterns. And these things are very, very subtle patterns, and most doctors will not recognize these. Your blood cells may be larger than normal. Your platelet count may be lower than, and not even, they don't have to be even out of the range, but on the low end. So your blood cells get a little bigger. Your platelet count goes down a little bit. Your protein levels shift so that you have more globulins and more albumin and less globulin. There's other subtle hints as well. That's the way I usually would recognize somebody. I stopped doing that load test a while ago because everybody came back with a positive test that they were iodine deficient. So I figured, well, I don't need to do this one too many more times. But if I have a patient that has polycystic ovaries, fibrocystic breasts, thyroid problems, and they have some of these patterns in the blood test, that's enough for me to assume that they're iodine deficient, because it is so common. what kind of dose should we have? If the RDA is too low, and that's 150 micrograms, which means it's 0.15 milligrams. Well, Japanese women, they eat seaweed. In fact, the Japanese, anybody in here Japanese? Japanese consume seaweed. It's part of their normal diet. They consume it basically almost on a daily basis. And the average Japanese woman eats about 13 milligrams of iodine a day. And I'm not saying that the iodine is protecting their breasts or keeping them skinny or protecting their thyroid. However, statistically, the Japanese have much lower levels of thyroid disease, breast disease, cancer, blah, blah, blah. Now, there's other reasons besides iodine, and I'm not going to say it's the only reason why they have these lower levels. But the dosage of iodine should be around 12.5 milligrams a day, not 150 micrograms a day. Now, if someone's really depleted, I may put them on 50 milligrams a day for a few months. It could take over a year to fill up your iodine stores. If you're going to try to fill up your iodine stores by eating salt that's been iodized, you would have to eat pounds and pounds of salt a day. It's not going to work. How would I recommend that you replete iodine? Either an iodine supplement or seaweed. By the way, I'm not recommending that anybody, this is not medical advice that I'm giving here tonight or on television. This is something that you should discuss with your doctor, but there's a good chance that if you're hearing my voice that you do have an iodine deficiency for reasons that I just mentioned. Okay? Any questions on iodine before we move on to magnesium? Yes, sir.
Is it usually the deficiency that you have seen, or people have consumed too much iodine also?
If I've ever seen an overdose of iodine, I didn't recognize it. Okay? Oh, you'd have to really try to overdose on iodine. And even at that point, your body would tend to excrete it. However, if you read the medical literature, there's all sorts of warnings about iodine overdose. Just like they used to warn us about vitamin D for years and years and years. Oh, be careful with vitamin D. Now all of a sudden, everybody's vitamin D deficient, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes after magnesium. Yes?
Do they have that in the multivitamins that we take?
Multivitamins usually will give you the RDA of iodine at 150 micrograms a day. Yes?
Can you recommend?
A specific brand of iodine? Yes, I could.
Yes.
Iodoral.
Iodinol?
Yes.
Iodinol.
It's a combination of iodine and iodide. They're different types of salts, and these are combinations. There's something that doctors used to give all the time in the past called Lugol's solution. I believe you can still get that. That's, again, it's a combination of iodine and iodide. Yes. You can find that on the internet.
So isn't hyperthyroidism overdose of iodine?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Hyperthyroidism?
Hyperthyroidism, is it caused by an overdose of iodine? Not in general, no. Hyperthyroidism is usually caused by an autoimmune disease where something's attacking the thyroid, or an overdosage of thyroid medicine. But no, iodine excess is extraordinarily rare. And again, you'd really have to try to do that. If you did overdose with iodine, could you have a hyperthyroid condition? I guess that's possible. Okay, I'm going to move on. Sir?
Yeah, is there iodine in salt? Like you see, salt is iodized.
Yes. It's been added to certain salt to avoid people from getting goiter. And it's done a good job. But it hasn't done a good job of repleting it to the levels that you need it for breast health, that you need it for cardiovascular health, that you need it for ovarian health and immune system health. Okay, and that's where doctors have gone wrong. You know, most time when doctors recommend a supplementation or the recommended daily allowance is to keep you from developing some very, very terrible disease like goiter, okay, which is very, very obvious. But oftentimes that level of supplementation is way short of what we need for health. So there's a big difference between the recommended daily allowance and what you really need to be healthy.
Would you recommend that we get the load test done prior to taking any supplements?
I recommend that you speak to a doctor who has knowledge and experience using this type of supplementation. But you could ask your doctor to do the load test, and he should be able to prescribe that for you. Yes, ma'am?
So if you're taking iodine supplement and then you do the blood test, you see the T3, T4 levels are in normal range, then your iodine levels should be normal, whatever you're taking.
No, no. The question is, if the T4, T3 ratio is normal, does that mean I don't have an iodine deficiency? And the answer is no. You don't overread that. It's possible to have normal T4, T3 ratio and still have normal iodine. There's a lot of things that you have to look at, and it's not that simple. Okay, I'm going to move on to magnesium. This is the second out of our three big players here. Again, soil depletion is one of the major players here. I'm not going to repeat that. Lack of green vegetables in your diet. The color green, where does it come from? Chlorophyll. Let me skip right to here. Our blood is red. Why? Because of iron. Chlorophyll is green. This I find, when I heard this the first time, and it wasn't in medical school, I said, oh my God, this is incredible. Hemoglobin and chlorophyll, they are the exact same molecule. They have this porphyrin ring. See this ring? They're exactly identical. In the middle of the porphyrin ring, in chlorophyll we have magnesium. In the middle of the porphyrin ring, we have iron. And this ring is designed, at least in plants, to absorb the light energy. And I'm going to talk about light when we talk about vitamin D because it's so important. But that light energy then comes into this ring, and somehow this mineral in there called magnesium takes that light energy and turns it into food, right? It turns it into plants and oxygen. It takes water and it takes the carbon from the ground and it turns it into plants and oxygen. And then we take that oxygen and carry it in our hemoglobin and turn it back into energy again. This is really, if you really think about this, this is really cool stuff. Magnesium is so important. So what gives the green plants their green color? Magnesium. It's part of their chlorophyll. It's like their blood. The chlorophyll is like the blood of the plants. And so you need to eat a lot of green stuff. And I don't mean green M&Ms either, okay? Foliage, plants that are green are really, really important and something that's really deficient. So you want to eat lots of green vegetables, things that have chlorophyll in it. Unfortunately, with the soil depletion, the magnesium levels may be low. So there may not be enough magnesium in the diet. The intestines may not be absorbing the magnesium. Your kidneys could excrete too much. You could have, if you have chronic diarrhea or malabsorption or alcoholism, chronic stress, medications, diuretics, waste magnesium. Now, you don't have to raise your hand, but every patient that's on diuretics, or almost everyone, the doctor will give them a mineral to take with the diuretic because they're losing that mineral. They give them potassium. How many doctors give magnesium to their patients on diuretics? Probably not too many because, again, we don't learn nutrition in medical school. What we learn is very little, and what we learn, most of it is not very correct either. This is a huge problem. If you've been on a diuretic, if you're an alcoholic, if you've been under a lot of stress, if you have problems with chronic diarrhea, you're probably magnesium deficient. If you're taking a calcium supplement, calcium and magnesium are opposites. They oppose each other. Calcium will push the magnesium out of your system. If you drink a lot of coffee or tea, these act like diuretics, just like the diuretics in your high blood pressure pills. Excessive phosphoric or carbonic acids found in soda pops push out the magnesium. Dehydration, excessive salt, there's a few other things. Stress, whether that stress is driving on Route 18 trying to get to your talk when the road is closed and you got to take a detour on the parkway and then your GPS kicks out and you can't read any of the stress of the signs coming here. That's stress. Anyway, we have a lot of stress in our lives, whether it's physical stress or biochemical stress or emotional stress. This wastes not only magnesium, but all the minerals in your body. will become depleted under stress. I showed you this slide before. And I mentioned this, how the porphyrin ring, these bonds absorb light. Very, very specific wavelengths of light, to be exact. Magnesium is important. It's a cofactor in more than 300 reactions. But the most important function is that it helps us utilize something called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Who remembers this from high school? Remember ATP?